Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to News Dose, and PlayStation might actually be listening after all. Now, whether this has something to do with their new leadership or if this has been in the works for a while is something that we currently don't know, and that's if any of this even turns out to be anything at all. But by all indications, they may have a game in development that fans have been asking for pretty much since the PlayStation 5 first launched. Now, speaking of PlayStation, it sounds like they will get even more Xbox games, and the same can be said for the Nintendo Switch 2. Xbox's multi-platform ambitions are ramping way up, and it's going rapidly, and we're going to talk about that as well. Before we get started, though, I do want to go and thank my supporters on Patreon and on YouTube memberships. You all are absolutely awesome for what you're doing, and just thank you so very much. Let's just go and get right into things, though, starting off with The Sims. We talked about this a few days ago, and now the rumors have 100% been confirmed. EA just re-released both The Sims 1 and The Sims 2 through their Legacy collections, which includes a lot of extra content such as their expansions. You'll actually be able to pick them up today on Steam, so you're not even going to have to wait. They cost $20 and $30 respectively, though if you want, you can get them in a discounted bundle for $40. And there definitely seems to be a lot of content here for $40. I also know that there's a lot of people within the Sims community that just flat out believes that the first two games are the best in the series. So, yeah, I think this is actually a really cool re-release for the Sims community. If you're into the Sims games, let me hear your opinion in the comments below. Which game do you think is the best and why? Now, since we're on the topic of PC games, you know, PC gamers right now are just living the good life, and they're pretty much getting everything from everybody. Well, that includes the newly released Spider-Man 2 from PlayStation. However, as unfortunate as it is, the wait seemingly hasn't been worth it, or at least so far, because this appears to be a rocky launch at best. Currently, it has a 56% approval rate on Steam, and that's because users are reporting a ton of problems, including constant crashes. Now, I'd say this is actually a little bit surprising in the sense that Nixxes was the studio that handled its port. You know, this is a first-party studio from PlayStation, and they typically do a good job, but for whatever reason, that's just not the case here with Spider-Man 2. They just didn't meet expectations this time, and this is something that I feel like Sony does need to improve on. They've had a few different PC releases come in a little hot. I don't know if that's just because they're rushing these games out to meet a specific date or exactly what's happening, but hopefully they can continue to get better over time. For the time being, though, what I'd kind of recommend here is that if you really want to play Spider-Man 2 on PC, put it on your wish list and just kind of wait for a few patches, and then pay attention to the recent reviews on Steam. Now, we also got news for Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown. This is a game that I really enjoyed last year. In my opinion, it's actually one of the best games from Ubisoft in really a very long time. Well, apparently, according to Ubisoft's associate marketing director, The Lost Crown sold 1.3 million units in its first year. This was spotted by Bogad on Twitter, and I think from my perspective, a fan's perspective, this seems fairly good for a Metroidvania, especially given it had a pretty high price tag for its genre when it first released. It launched at $50, and, you know, it wasn't even available on Steam at the time. That was a major mistake by Ubisoft. So for it to surpass 1 million units in its first year, I think is pretty good, but that's kind of the bittersweet part about this news. Late last year, Ubisoft disbanded the Lost Crown team because Ubisoft quote-unquote needed more hands to help on other projects that had better sales potential. I mean, this right here is one of the core problems with these AAA publishers. They would much rather have these super risky, go big or go home blockbuster AAA games than have these smaller titles that will bring in money, but they don't really have quite the upside. It's unfortunate, to say the least, but seemingly some of the team did move on over to a Rayman project. So, I mean, you know, I think that's, at the very least, good to hear. Okay, so let's go talk about Xbox and their multi-platform plans. I feel like by this point, Xbox fans need to just kind of brace themselves for the inevitable that most everything will eventually come over to Nintendo and PlayStation consoles. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that Xbox won't have its own exclusives, but the way I think fans should just kind of set their expectations is that most everything will be timed exclusive. Now, that might be 3 months, maybe it'll be half a year, a full year, maybe 2 years, or who really knows. That's one of the mysteries that we've yet to uncover for Xbox's multi-platform plan. But I think yesterday's announcement that Forza Horizon 5 is heading to the PlayStation 5 has at least confirmed one thing. There truly is no red line when it comes to Xbox franchises on other platforms. Forza is a pillar for the Xbox brand, and it's officially coming over to the PlayStation 5 this spring. So this kind of begs the question of, what about Gears of War? What about Halo? And even Fable? And what I want to say to you Xbox fans right now is that if these franchises actually get ported over to rival platforms, then don't go into this news with a negative perspective. For me, and this is just from my own perspective, the one thing that I don't like about this multi-platform plan is the idea of less competition in the console space, just because I truly believe that competition drives people, or in this case, it drives these companies to be better. Xbox drives PlayStation to be better, and PlayStation drives Xbox to be better because they hold each other accountable. However, if you do enjoy Xbox's games, then that's not going to change just because they release somewhere else too. Don't attach your enjoyment to exclusivity. The only difference is that you're just going to enjoy these games with even more people, and that's ultimately a good thing for these franchises' futures. With a wave of millions of new fans, this could even secure more games for Gears of War and for Halo going forward. Also, if you enjoy the Xbox ecosystem, such as Game Pass as one such example, you're still probably going to get a lot of these games well ahead of the PlayStation release or Nintendo if they really do go in that timed exclusivity direction. You're still going to get all of that. You can still enjoy the Xbox platform for what it is. You're still going to have future Xbox consoles. They might be different and more PC-like, but their console experience will still be there, which includes Xbox Game Pass. So all I'm trying to say here is that yes, there are some big changes on the horizon for Xbox, but don't let that impact your enjoyment. Enjoy games because they're fun and not because they're locked away on a single platform. Now, with that out of the way, there are rumors floating around from several insiders that Halo the Master Chief Collection and a new Gears collection will come to the PlayStation 5, and very well possibly will come to the Nintendo Switch 2 as well. In fact, Exodus TV also claimed that Forza Horizon 5 is going to get a Switch 2 port. It's not just going to come to the PS5 only, and when you think about it, I think all of this makes a lot of sense. And let me just kind of explain why. First, let's talk about Forza Horizon 5. The studio that's handling its port is Panic Button, out of all companies. And if you're unaware of who Panic Button is, these past 8 years, they've mostly been known for their Nintendo Switch ports. This includes Wolfenstein the New Colossus and Youngblood, Warframe, Subnautica, Doom Eternal, that's a big one, and Apex Legends. So with Panic Button's experience for the Nintendo Switch, it kind of makes a lot of sense to have them work on a Switch 2 port of Forza Horizon 5 as well. That's just kind of putting 2 and 2 together. Now, as for a Halo and Gears collection, though, both of these are iconic collections of games that are 10 plus years old. From just a business perspective, introducing these collections to a new audience with millions of more fans ahead of a new release makes a lot of sense. So let me just kind of put it this way. We know about Gears of War E-Day. We also know that Forza Horizon 6 will eventually release, likely sometime soon. And then, of course, there's going to be more Halo games too. We all know that these games are on the way, and by introducing these collections to PlayStation and Nintendo gamers, well then suddenly, these franchises are going to have millions upon millions of more people interested in the new games when they eventually release. And that includes even if they're exclusive to Xbox. If Gears of War E-Day launches as an Xbox exclusive, well, by releasing the Gears collection on other platforms, well, then suddenly you're going to have a lot more people interested in Gears of War E-Day. You see what I'm kind of saying there? Again, we don't necessarily know what Xbox's exact long-term strategy is with their exclusives, but I do think these specific rumors makes sense when you think about it. Let me know how you all view this, though. I do understand that there's going to be an emotional response if these games are ported over, but like I said, don't attach your enjoyment to exclusivity, and we'll just kind of see what happens. Now, speaking of emotional responses, I know that I'm going to be flat out ecstatic if Sony decides to give us an improved version of Bloodborne. I mean, Bloodborne is an all-time great game, but it does have that one glaring issue, and, it's a notable one. 30 FPS. I mean, I don't know why Sony has been dragging their feet with this specific game. Gamers have been begging for a 60 FPS update since the PlayStation 5 first released. But, Herman Holst, he's instead been prioritizing his precious Horizon Zero Dawn and apparently Until Dawn. I mean, don't get me wrong, both of those games are fine, but I don't think a lot of people were necessarily asking for remakes. The Last of Us Part 1 would probably be included in that as well. But meanwhile, though, there was an unofficial fan-made Bloodborne 60 FPS patch out there. This was created by Lance McDonald. There wasn't an entire YouTube video about this and everything, or at least until now. Check this out. Lance McDonald posted this on Twitter. On February 21st, 2021, I created and released a patch for Bloodborne, which makes the game run at 60 FPS. Today, I received a DMCA takedown notification on behalf of Sony Interactive Entertainment, asking that I remove links to the patch I posted on the internet. So, I've now done so. Now, what really makes this just so fascinating is the fact that Sony did nothing about this video for 4 years. So the question is, why now? Could it be possible that the reason that they're suddenly acting upon this fan-made 60 FPS patch is because they themselves have something in the works behind the scenes? I mean, sure, this could just be more hopium. We've been filling that balloon of hopium up since the release of the PlayStation 5. But admittedly, it is a little bit strange that Sony just suddenly decided to take this patch down after just 4 years. So all I can really kind of say here is that I hope this indicates Sony is doing something behind the scenes, but the reality is we still don't have any kind of official news, and I still would remain cautious for the time being just because, we've been burned so many times already. Still, though, I mean, that hopium is still there, and I'm not going to let go quite just yet. Let's go take a look at the poll of the day, though, where I asked you all to predict if there's going to be a Nintendo Direct in February, and most of you all are on the side that yes, they will, which is something that I am in agreement with here. I mean, there's a lot of speculation and supposed leaks that are going around right now, but I'm always a little cautious over Direct leaks specifically, because to me, they almost always come off as educated guesses. In other words, Nintendo is a very repetitive company in the sense that they do like certain months of the year for their Directs. So it wouldn't really surprise me if they have something planned for February. Now, if they do, I will say don't go in expecting Switch 2 news, but I could very well see this being the final Direct for the current Switch as their main priority. Anyways, though, that's going to be it for this episode, but until next time, make sure to subscribe, ring that bell, and peace out.